Welcome to the VB Toolbox. In this tutorial we will be working with subs and functions, also known as procedures and methods. I will be showing you some of the basic differences between the two and also showing you how to use them. So let's go ahead and start a new project. If you open your Solution Explorer, your start page, select New Project from the list and select a Windows Forms application from that menu, excuse me. And you can just give your project a name. I'm going to call it Functions and Subs. You can name your project whatever you want and click OK when you're done to begin your project. So we're going to start with our beginning form template here, and we're just going to add a couple of basic controls to this form. I'm going to start with a couple of buttons. One will be used for executing our subs, and the other will be used to call our functions. So with that object selected on your form, you can do a Control-C or right-click and copy and click in the form again, and then select paste, or right-click and select paste, or Control-V. Another tool we want in here is going to be a text box. Actually, we're going to use a couple of these, one for input and one for output. So again, we can select that control and press Control-C on your keyboard, and then Control-V to paste it. And the second box is going to be our output box, so I'm going to make that a multi-line box. If we go down in our Properties dialog on the right, with that control selected, we can find the multi-line property and change that to true. And now we'll be able to drag this down so we can see more text. Alright, so for the beginning of this tutorial, I'm going to be executing methods and functions as I stated, and for the later part of the tutorial, what I will show you how to do is create a real-time calculator with just 3 text boxes and a combo box. So stay tuned for that. It should be kind of fun. First thing I will do here is select our output box, and I'm going to give that box a name by going to the name property down here, and I'm just going to call this txt out. You can name yours whatever you like as long as you remember the name. That's all that's important for calling upon it when needed. And I will call this text box txt in. Make sure you're in the name property and not the text property. All right. And for our buttons, for the first button, I'm just going to call this one CMD. I like to do that. I just name it CMD as a command. And I'm going to call this one sub. And I'm going to change the text property so it doesn't say button 1 anymore. So I'm going to slide this property scroller down here to the text property, and I will type in run sub, and that will change our text. Down here on the second button, I'm going to just call that one, I'm going to name it CMD function, and I'm just going to say run function. Alright, now with these controls built, we are ready to begin coding on this guy and getting into some subs and functions. To open up your code editor here, all you have to do is double click on your main form if you didn't see that, or you can press the F7 key from the form and it will open up the editor window for you. Now before we begin coding here, I'd like to just take a moment to explain the difference, the main difference between a sub and a function. Think of a sub as a command or a list of commands that you want your program to carry out. And think of a function as a request where you always expect something back from it. Think of it like, say you have someone, a friend or someone, you ask them to make you a pot of coffee, and they walk off and make a pot of coffee. But they don't bring you back anything. So that would be a sub, okay? Whereas a function, you say, could you make me some coffee and bring me back a cup? And you would expect a cup of coffee back, right? So it doesn't really matter what the data type is that you return, but it is important that you specify a data type, whether it be an integer or a string value, or even a completely new instance of a class. So if we had a custom class here called coffee, we could actually return that as an object or a value. So let us go ahead and begin our demonstration here. So let's see, looking at our form here, we have a text box, and we want to command our application to do something with that text box, okay? So we can come back to our form here, our code editor, and we'll drop down below our form load sub. You can get rid of that if you want. We may actually end up using it later on, but within your class, let's just create a new sub. So what I'm going to do is say private, and that's just the access level. That means that this sub is only accessible from within itself. No other forms can look at this form and say, hey, I want you to run this sub. I want you to execute it. If we wanted to be able to make it available to other forms, you could use public instead. Okay. So there's a lot of different access levels that you can specify, but we're just going to stick with private. Works for us here. And we're going to say sub, so we're creating a private sub. And I'm just going to say make text box. Cool. And I'm not going to give it any parameters. We'll discuss parameters later on. So let's start by talking to our text box. Our txt out is what we called it. So I'm going to say txt out, and I'm going to set the text property. And I'm going to say enter a string of hello VB toolbox. All right. So by itself it does nothing, okay? But if we, well, I can run it here. See, nothing occurs. So it's not actually doing anything yet. We have to invoke it. We have to call upon it to make it execute. So let's go over to our run sub button, and by double clicking on this we will generate a click event. And that means whenever this button is clicked, it's going to execute the code. Now we could have 5 different buttons in here, and we could have this txtout.text and do other stuff. But we'd end up, repeating the same code for each button. So what this sub allows us to do is reuse it. Just once we create the sub, we can just call it by its name here and invoke it. So to demonstrate this, I'm going to say make text box cool. And it recognizes it. So now when I click the button, it will execute or run this subroutine. Sorry, it's launching on my other screen here. So let's click run sub, and it should output to your output box, hello VB toolbox. So let's add a few more things to our sub. Our subroutine can be numerous different commands that we wish to accomplish within our application. It could be calculations or a number of different things. So I'm going to say txt out dot for color. This changes the font color. And it's going to bring up a list of colors when I do this. So I'm just going to select orange. Okay. You can select whatever color you like. And let's also change the background color. That'll be fun. So say txt out dot back color property equals, and this time we're going to say black. So if we did this right, we should have orange text in a black box. So we just accomplished 3 different things with the click of one button, and we could reuse this with any button. We could call make text box cool from any other control or event in our application. So that's pretty sweet. You're not limited to just updating a single object either. We could do some things to the button we're clicking even. So we could do something crazy like cmd sub dot location. Now don't get too worried if this seems a little complex. You don't have to remember. It's just a demonstration of how you can accomplish multiple tasks at once. So the location is a point value, so I'm just going to say create a new point value, and I want you to move the button to the right on the screen by 5 pixels every time I click it. It's a little crazy, but we'll just say cmd sub dot location, and we're going to grab the x value or the x coordinate from that point. There's a point consists of 2 values generally, an x and a y value, and this stores the location on the screen. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to add 5 to it, and then for the y, that's the distance from the top of the screen, cmd sub, whoops, wrong button, dot location dot y. Okay, so I'm just going to leave it at its current distance from the top of the screen, and I'm just going to change its x value, which is the left side of the screen, and I'm going to add 5 to that value every time we click the button. It's going to flow through here, it's going to call this guy and run this. Okay, so let's just give that a little test for fun, and it should, every time I click the button, it's going to move 5 pixels to the right. So we're doing crazy stuff here, and you can do a number of things with a sub or a function. You can even call functions that you create inside your subs to return values to variables, or in the event that you needed something. Say I wanted to create a function to fetch the location of the x-axis of my command button. I just wanted to return that, and then I could just call that from there. Or I could even perform this whole calculation, return the completed value directly into this, but kind of getting ahead of myself there. So that's the basic usage of a sub. It's just a list of commands to carry out at your will. So now that we understand what subs do, let's have a look at what functions do. I'm going to drop down below my first sub here, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to create a function. I'm going to make it private, or if you want, you can make it public. It doesn't matter. It's not going to hurt anything. So instead of creating a sub, I'm going to create a function, and I'm going to give that function a name. And what I want to do is I want to find out what day of the week it is. That could be fun. So let's say get day, and again, I'm not going to add any parameters or make it really dynamic. And this is where it changes a little bit from how we created our sub. We have to return a value. This isn't just a command, it's a request. We're saying, hey, go get this for me. So what do we want it to fetch for us? We want it to fetch a string value, okay, the name of the day of the week. So notice how it's underlined in green. It's telling us that, hey, it's not returning a value yet. It has to return a value. It's a function. So to fetch the day of the week, all we have to do is use the keyword return. Okay. Now, the return type needs to be the same type that you specify up here. Okay. So if we created this as a Boolean, a true false, we would have to return either true or false. And we can include a bunch of logic to determine whether it's going to be true or false. But we're not going to do that just yet. So let's return a string value. And the value that I want to return is a string from today dot day of week dot toString. Okay, so I'm grabbing today's date, which is a built-in object in VB, and I'm grabbing its day of week property, which will be we'll force it to a string here, so it will return a string value. And now if we call this, we need a method to call this. So let's go to our run function button on our main form. We're going to double click on that, and it's going to generate a click event for us again. So here's another difference between subs and functions. You don't just generally call a function. We wouldn't say get day. Okay. Now we can, and it's not even going to throw an error here, but it's not going to know what to do with it. Okay, it's just going to run what's in here, and it'll be dumped somewhere in memory. And we haven't actually told it to do anything. This represents this return value. Okay, so we can actually take this. Now imagine we had a message box, say message box, you know, some string, and I'm going to comment this out for a moment. It's just a static value. You know, once it's been hard-coded in the program, it's always going to be that value. It's not very dynamic. So if I run my app here, press the run function, there it is. It's going to say some string. Okay. Now what if I wanted to return more dynamic information, meaning that information may change and the application needs to be smart enough to you know, to update it properly. So I'm going to use method or message box. I'm just going to cut that from there and dump it right there. All right. So this is a string value. As you can see, when we hover over it, it returns it as a string because we told it to be a string. Okay. So even though it looks like, you know, just a weird chunk of code there, it is actually returning this value. So if I run this, it's gonna, you know, check the system date and convert that to the day of the week and then to a string value. So look at that. We ran the function and it says it's Thursday. Now this is dynamic, meaning it's going to automatically update itself tomorrow when we run it. Now yours may output a different value, of course, because you may not be watching this on Thursday, but you get the point. So we essentially told it to go grab that day of the week. Works pretty good. So now let's take what we've learned and combine the two of them together. We're going to create a little query or a little, you know, robot servant, if you will. I'm going to go to this field. Let's see, we already named it. We should be good to go. It's txt in. I'm going to go down to the text property, and I'm just going to change the text value, the default text value, to ask me a question. So it's going to fill this with ask me a question, and our little robot servant, little artificial intelligence that we're going to build here, is going to answer our question. All right, it's not going to be very sophisticated, so don't worry. It's not These aren't the beginnings of Skynet. Okay, so let's go down right below our getDay function, and we're going to create a new sub here. And I'm going to say private sub, and I'm going to call this examine query. So it's going to look through our query string, our little question, and it's going to determine what the appropriate response would be based upon the question that's asked. Okay, so this is just for fun, just to employ both subs and functions together. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a little internal variable. I'm just going to say dim, and I'm going to call it query as a string. And the query is going to be txt query, or I'm sorry, not txt query, it's txt in dot text. And I'm going to convert this, I'm going to take the whole text string and convert it to lowercase, just for simple analysis, so we don't have to do anything tricky to watch out if uppercase and lowercase are combined to check the case of the text. So I'm just going to convert it all to lowercase, so it's really easy to determine what's in the box. So, whoops, I'm going to say to lower. That converts it to lowercase, so it's going to be a lowercase string no matter what's in it. And let's do this. We'll say if query dot contains, whoops, so we're going to search for a text within our a word within our text, and I'm going to say what word do we want to look for? I want to look for the word what. And also, I want to find the word day. Okay, I'm creating a really basic artificial intelligence here. So if it contains the word what and the word day, then it will proceed forward. If it, what this and also will do is, if this value is not found, if what isn't even found first, it's just going to completely ignore the rest of this and exit. So it's got to find both of these words in this sequence. So if it finds both of them, then what we'll say is txt out dot text equals, and I'm going to use the string format. There's different ways to do this. I'll go over both of them with you here quickly. I'm going to say string dot format, and what this allows me to do is just format a string with variables and specify the values with parameters. And I don't want to scare you off here. I'll show you a couple of different ways to do it. So I'm going to start off by saying robot. That's our robot talking to us, sorry. Today is, and I'm going to use curly braces and put a 0, and that's our first parameter. That's how we define our parameters. We could do 0, 1, 2, 3, as long as they're in curly braces, and we specify what their values will be with the parameters. So say robot today is variable master, and now we will end the string and add a comma here, and now we can add our parameter that is represented by this 0. So I'll just say get day. Remember what get day is? So what it's going to do is it's going to see this line. It's going to say, oh, we're going to create a string, and the string is going to be this, and we want to put this. We're going to go up here, oh, what's the day of the week, and we're going to return it to this placeholder right here. Okay. Now we could write this exact same thing. I know that the string.format is actually really cool. It's a cool feature for creating strings without the breaks. We can do the exact same thing. We could say txt out dot text equals, I could take this text here, set the text to this, and what we have to do to get this value is break the string with quotes and concatenate using an ampersand, and the external value that we want, which is going to be get day, like this, and that should return the exact same thing as this line here. So what we had to do is break this string to bring in an external variable or a function to that place. So I like, rather than breaking my strings apart, I like to just use this method, and you can add in multiple values. If I had 0 and 1, then I would put another comma here at the end, and you can just keep adding them. So it's all a matter of preference. I'm going to go ahead and comment this out so it's not redundant. All right, so if our query contains what and also day, then our robot is going to say today is this day, pulled from this function. Now if the robot doesn't understand us, meaning that we typed in something that does not meet this criteria, we need a default response. So I'm just going to say txtout.text equals robot. Sorry, master, I require more programming to answer that. Okay, so it's just a default response if it doesn't understand what we're asking. All right, now all we have to do is call upon this examine query. So instead of, let's see, what do we want to do? We'll just reuse our run function button here, recycle it. I'm going to go ahead and comment out that message box and just pop in the examine query method right there. So now when we click this button, it's going to run this sub, okay? And while it's running this sub, it's going to run into this call to the function, and it's going to stick it in that string because it's a string value. So it's going to run this and return this value to this placeholder. Okay, hope that makes sense. So we can still run that. Hey, that's pretty cool. So let's just try something that is obviously not going to meet our criteria. Who am I? Robot. Sorry, master, I require more programming to answer that. Okay. Well, what day is it? Today is Thursday, master. Oh, really? So the cool thing about this is it doesn't care how you word it, as long as the words come in this order, what and day, it should work. Robot. Sorry, master. What is the day today? Today is Thursday. See, it still recognized it. Even though we changed the way that it's worded, it still recognized it based upon the pattern that it found. So we created a really, silly little AI robot. And that's pretty cool. So, okay, now we're going to step it up a bit and try creating a cool calculator application, a real-time calculator. And what I want it to do is, as soon as the numbers are inputted and an operator is chosen, it's going to automatically begin calculating. Okay, so there's not going to be push 5, then push the plus button, then push, 11, and then hit the enter key to calculate. This is going to be a real-time dynamic calculator. Okay, sounds pretty fancy. And the reason I picked a calculator is kind of a common beginner application that a lot of instructors have students build. So I wanted something kind of like that, but a little cooler. You might not think it's cool. I thought it was kind of cool, but let's go ahead and jump back to our main form. Now let's add a couple of fields here, a couple of tools. I'm going to grab a couple more text boxes. So I'm just going to drop a text box there. Doesn't have to be real big. This is just going to be our first number. And I'm going to change the name of that to txt num1 for number 1. Okay, our first number. And now I am going to grab, actually before we do that, let's right click on that and copy, or Control C and Control V like we did before, and create a second box. Actually create another one, right click again, select paste. So we got 3 text boxes. This is going to be the result, and number 1 and number 2. And something else we're going to need is some sort of operation to carry out, adding, subtracting, multiplying, and things like that. So select your second box, and we'll want to give that a name as well. I'm going to call this one txt num2, so I know who I'm talking about. And finally, I'm going to select this box here and call it txt answer. Okay. And I'm going to grab a label control here, just to kind of, as a finishing touch. I'm not even going to bother renaming this one because it's just going to be static. I'm just going to put an equal sign there and get that up there between our boxes. You can position these, if it's selected, you can position it with your arrow keys. So now we need an operator. We need to know what we're going to do. Let's see. So I want to grab a combo box. These are kind of fun to work with. And it's kind of big by default. I'm going to shrink that guy up. And to make this, I want this to be read-only. I don't want the user to be able to enter any values in here manually. So hope that's going to be big enough. We may have to stretch that out a little bit, but I think I'm just going to call this CBX for combo box and operator, so we know which operation we're performing. And I want to go down to the collection. Let's see here, the items. Hello, where are you? Okay, items property, and click on the collection over here. You get this little ellipsis button. If you click that, you can edit the items in the drop down. So first one I'll do is add. Then I'm going to hit the enter key, drop down to the next line. I'm going to have subtract, a minus, and then I'm going to put an X to represent multiplication. You can put an asterisk in there depending on your preference. And division, I'm also going to throw in, just for fun, let's throw a percentile in there so we can render a percentage from a number. And once we have these values, we can click OK. And I don't know if we're going to be able to see that, but I want to change this to read only, so the user cannot actually input a value in there. Okay. So find the drop down style property. Let's see, drop down style right there, and by default it's in drop down, so we're gonna click that little drop down arrow and select drop down list, and that makes it read only. Then the user is unable to actually input a value in here. And I'm just going to test this window real quick and see if we can see all of our values. So we've got a plus, minus. Yeah, see, it's kind of chopping them off, so we're going to stretch that out just a little bit. You may have got yours good on the first try. I usually take a couple of tries here, so forgive me for the delay. All right, that should work. Now, by default, it's blank. There's nothing in there. I'm just going to set the default index to 1 in my code. So you can, if you double clicked on your form here, it'll generate this form load event, and if you deleted it earlier, it'll bring it back for you. And as soon as the form loads up, I'm just going to do set the default value cbx operator dot selected index equals 0. And what that does is it just 0 is the first item, that is the addition operator, right, the plus, and it's going to set that as the selected index by default. So now if we run this, it should say plus automatically, and then the user cannot choose anything but what's in the box. And that'll help us for automatically calculating without selecting anything by default. So let's see, what do we want to do next? We're going to need a list of operators. Okay, we've got our, these represent the operation, but they don't actually do anything. They're just little characters. Okay, we need something to represent our operations. So what we'll do is we'll go down to the bottom of our last sub here. Make sure you're still inside of your class. And I'm going to use an enumerator. So what this does is it just basically creates a list of items for us, okay? And it just creates a sort of a numbered list. We'll say private enum, and what we want to call it is something related to what we're doing. In this case, I'm using it for my operator. So I'm going to say, what operation do we want to perform? So I'm going to say operation is the name of my enumerator. And so my first operation is going to be add. My second one is going to be subtract and multiply and divide and percent. Okay, so now we can call this, and it just gives us something that's logical for us to look at. I mean, we could represent the addition, subtraction, multiplication, and all that with numbers or letters or whatever we want, but this just makes it more, friendly for us to look at when we're selecting our operations. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump up here right above our operation, and we will I'm going to put a little division between what we did earlier and what we're doing now. So I'm just going to make a little note here. I'm going to say calculator app, okay, something like that. It's up to you, just so we can jump to where we want to quickly. So my first thing I want to do is I want to create a function to associate my operations with my combo box items. Okay, so we've got our addition, subtraction, but they don't really do anything. So we're gonna make them do something here. I'm gonna create a function to return the operation. Okay, and then we can use that operation later on. We can associate these with what they actually do, the calculation that they perform. So first step is to associate our items. So we're going to say private function get operator. Remember, we always want to return. We're telling our program to fetch something for us. Okay, so get operator as. Now this is where we've created our own sort of type to return. We're going to return one of these operations. So we're going to return as operation, and it should recognize it since we created it. And so now we have to figure out which one is selected. So we're going to say select case, okay? And we're going to choose from a list from the CBX operator, whatever is the text property of that combo box, which is going to be plus, minus, multiplication, division, or percent, right? So we're just going to select, case, whatever's in that combo box. So we'll say case plus, okay? Now I'm going to show you another little trick here, kind of save us some line space. Generally what it wants to do is every time we have a case, calls it, drop down a line. It's a pretty common coding technique. You can force multiple expressions onto the same line using this colon separator, okay? So normally I'd say case plus, and if it's a plus, what do I want to do? Well, I have to return a value because it's a function. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say return operation.add, and it already, because it knows we're returning an operation type from this enum, it's going to grab the list for us automatically. Gotta love that. So it's smart that way. So if it's a plus, return add. And down here you'd say case minus, drops down a line, say operation subtract, okay? So we're just associating each one. Now, if you want to save a little bit of line space here, you can use this colon to put both of these on the same line. In some cases, this is not actually desirable. It's only desirable, it's not a bad practice, it's only a bad practice if it makes your code less readable. In this case, I think it makes it more readable, reduces a lot of the line space, so I like to do it. It's up to you. You can leave it as it was, or shrink up your code a little bit, keep it clean and sharp. We're gonna have to do each one of these, so we might as well just grab grab these two guys we just created, do a Control C, come down here, paste two more. We actually have a third line, so I'm gonna grab that one more time and paste here just to save time, okay? And we'll just go through and rename these. So we have the next one was an X representing multiplication, so I'll have to come over here and change this to multiply. Whoops, I hit the wrong one. And this one should be divide. I gotta change my character to the division symbol that I put in there. And finally, percent. And I'll just put a percent sign in there. Okay, now you notice that we've returned all of our values, but my function's still green down here. What's going on? I gave it everything it wants. Well, the problem is it would work, but the program thinks that there's a potential that one of these values may never show up. What if there was a D in there for some reason? It's not going to return a value because none of these are true, okay? So it has to return a value. So what we can do to make our function look for anything else, if just to satisfy its needs for an absolute return value, we can just say case else and say return whatever. I'll just grab one of these randomly, it doesn't matter. So if for some bizarre reason, even though we've tightened up our code and there's no chance, we made it read-only so the user can't enter anything, there's no chance of it returning anything but these, at least we've satisfied our function's demand. In case all else fails for some bizarre reason, it's just gonna add, okay? So we made our function happy by making sure that it returns value, even if the unexpected happens. All right, so now we can use this to fetch the operation, and it'll automatically, based upon the letter that it finds, grab an operation for us. So now we actually need to do something with this. So we want this query, or I'm sorry, not the query. We want this application to be as dynamic as possible. So let's go ahead and create our calculation function, and it will be dynamic. So what we're going to do is we want to take number 1 and number 2 and perform an operation on it. So this function is going to be a little more complex than the ones we've done. We haven't used any parameters, and this is pretty simple, so don't get nervous. But it is important for us to specify which values we want to calculate, and to make it dynamic. Maybe we want to calculate something else in the application that's not actually in one of the text boxes, and we want it to be reusable, so we don't want to force it to use the values in the text box. So we're going to take this and we're going to say private function, and we're going to call it calculate. Okay, this is where the magic happens. Okay, so now we're going to add 3 parameters. One to represent the value of the first number, no matter where it's coming from, whether it's in the text boxes or anywhere else in the app. We can reuse this code. That's the beauty of this, of using these parameters. So say A as a double value, and what that will allow us to do, instead of there's a lot of different data types for numbers. There's integers, which is just going to return a whole number. We want to be able to add in decimals if we so desire. So I'm going to say use a double for A, and B as a double. Whoops. And finally, we need to know what to do with A and B. And again, we don't want to hard code it into our function. We want it to be dynamic so we can use it anytime from any other place in our application. So what we're going to do is pump an operation into it from our operations list. So we're going to say the op as an operation, and then we have to return a type of value. So the type that we want to return is also a double, so it can have, sorry, what we're doing is we're going to calculate, we're going to do A, we're going to take A and B, perform this operation on them, and return the value. Okay, so that could be A plus B if the operation is an add, or A minus B if the operation is a subtraction, and so on and so forth. So let's just make a simple one-line if statement. We could do if else, else if for every single one of these and break it out. I'm just gonna do a single if statement for every single operation, just to keep our code nice and tight here. I'm gonna say if op, being this guy right here, equals, it knows we're looking for an operation. So if the operation is add, then return A plus B. Wow, how easy is that? Now, we're still in green here because we haven't, in the case that this is not true, if it's not an add, it's still not satisfied. So let's keep going. We'll say if op equals subtract, then return A, you got it, minus B. Okay? Wow, how easy is that? Still not happy with this, is it? Because it's possible that it could be something else. If the operation equals multiply, then return A times B. All right, a little more. If op equals, we could have also done this with a select case, by the way, but this is just very readable. So if operation equals divide, then return A divided by B. Piece of cake. Oh, all right. So it's still not happy with us. We have another operation to do here. Say if op equals percent, we will try, and then we will return. I'm gonna open up some parentheses here, and I'm going to say to get a percentage, what we'll do is we'll divide A by B and then multiply it by 100 to return a percentage. All right, we've gone through all of our operations, and our function is still not happy with us. It's still in green down here. Now technically this would work, but our program doesn't really understand that this is all of the possibilities for op, okay? And it's still looking for an absolute return value in the case that none of these is true, all right? So if for some strange reason none of our operations existed and some other value came through the operator, to satisfy our function, all we have to do is say return 0, all right? As long as it returns value, just remember that your function should always return a value. Absolutely. You know, it needs to find a pathway to an absolute return. So, all right. Not sure what I did there. I think earlier when I accidentally clicked down instead of, it added all these little parentheses to my enumerators. Silly thing. Just get rid of those. Now it's happy again. Might be a good idea to, you know, save your work. Okay, so now to tie this all together, we're going to bring this all together in one simple little sub. Okay, so I'm going to come down here and add one final sub. I'm just going to call this sub private sub, and this is going to be our command to execute all these other functions and commands. Okay, this is the one that brings them all together. So I'm going to say solve problem. No parameters required. It's pretty basic. Now the important step in this is that we want to use a try-catch expression here to catch any errors and return gracefully back to the application in the event that an error occurs. If we don't use this and we try coming out here and we try punching in ABC and 5 over here, it's going to be like, you know, try to perform the operation on ABC, you know, ABC minus 15 equals, and it's going to crash on us because it's not going to be able to, you know, calculate a text value with a number and get anything intelligent. So it's not going to be happy. What this is going to do is say, hey, if you can do it, do it. If not, no biggie. Don't worry about it. Okay? So we're going to try to solve the problem. And if there's an error for any reason, we accidentally entered a letter or something, or it just simply does not like our expression, it's going to catch that error, and I'm not going to do anything. Just ignore it, okay? It'll catch it, it'll know it's there, but it's not going to tell you about it, okay? Because we're not putting anything in there. So what we're going to try to do is change txt answer.text, that's our final box, and we are going to use our calculate function to populate that text value. Okay, it's going to return a value from our calculate, and it can do that even though calculate is going to produce a double or a number value. A text box can hold numbers, so it's going to be just fine. So we want to set, oh, wow. That's fantastic. One moment, please. All right, I'm back. Sorry about that. I need to invest in some new equipment here. My laptop is ancient. They're just kind of spendy, so. Anyway, let's see, where was I? Good thing I saved just recently. So we want to return the calculate function, okay? And that's going to return a double value. So we have to tell it which numbers we want to calculate. In this case, we want to calculate whatever is in text box num1 and text box num2. So I'm going to say text box, let's see, text num1.text. We're going to take the value from that and calculate it using whichever operation we choose. We're going to calculate it against txt num2 dot text. And for the operation, now we don't want to hard code in any one of these operations, right? So how do we make that dynamic? How do we dynamically tell it which one to use? Oh yeah, that's right. We created this public function get operator. Okay, so it's just going to take a peek at that combo box, and it's going to tell us exactly which operator to use, and it's going to return it. Okay, so we don't even have to specify an operation. It's dynamic. So say get operator. Perfect. I don't know if that's required, but so it's going to just go grab whichever operator it needs based upon what's in that box. Alrighty. So now that we have this cool sub set to dynamically execute a calculation whenever we desire, all we need is some events to cause this to occur. So let's just come out here to our main form, and we'll double click in our text box, and what this will generate is a text change event. So that means every time that we type in that box, it's going to fire off that event. Okay, so all we have to do, I'm sorry, it's not going to fire the event, it's going to fire, well, it will fire the text change event, and from there we will fire off the solve problem sub. Sorry, getting myself all mixed up here. So we just want to solve the problem anytime we type in the box. Now you know what's going to happen as soon as we start typing in here, because this one's blank, it's going to try calculating a blank value against a number or whatever we put in here, and it's going to catch an error, isn't it? But it doesn't care because we told it to do nothing. This try catch keeps it from making our application explode on us. So it just handles it gracefully and ignores the error. All right. So in the event that we type in this text box, it's going to calculate automatically. So let's do the same for this one. So when we punch a number in here, it automatically recalculates. Okay, solve the problem. Let's just give it a little test here. Okay, I'm going to kick it off. Hopefully my computer won't blow up on me again. Let's say 5 plus 5. Oh, look at that, it's working. Okay, well that's pretty awesome. 5 plus 9, 14, good. Let's see, 5 plus 7, 12. Let's multiply. Let's multiply. Oh man, maybe if we type in here. But I wanted to do, oh that worked. I want it to automatically calculate when I select one of these too. So how do we do that? Well, I will show you. One more little goodie. We'll come out here and we'll double click on our combo box, and that's going to generate a select index change event. that means that you clicked on the combo box and selected something, so the index changed on us. What do we want to do when the index changes? Oh yeah, let's solve a problem. Awesome. Let's give this a try. So we come over here, run the sub. Oh yay. Run our function. Yeah, that's working. Let's do some calculations. All right. 10 plus 10 is 20. Awesome. So it's calculating automatically. We've created an automatic calculator. How about this? Oh, now we can select these and it automatically calculates. 10 times 10 is 100. Awesome. 10 divided by 10 is 1. 10% of 10 is 100%. No. Let's see. 5% of 10, 50%. Awesome. Or, yeah, 5 of 10 is 50%. So our application is working beautifully. Oh, notice that. We have a decimal value as 1/2 of 10, or 0.5. How about we do 1.7 times 10? 17. 170. 10.5. 17.85. So this is a pretty awesome application that we just developed here. Oh, typed in some text. What didn't it do? Didn't crash on us. Caught those errors. Doesn't like them, but it's not bothering us. So anyway, that is functions and subs in a nutshell. There's so many more things you can do. But for a beginning tutorial, I think an automatic calculator is kind of a cool thing. So I'm going to go ahead and leave you with that for now. I hope that this has been helpful for you. If you have questions or comments, if you didn't like the way I did something, feel free to tell me in the comments. Otherwise, if you think this will be helpful to anyone else, please like and share it with them. I greatly appreciate all the support out there and hope that you'll join me in the future for more tutorials. Take care, everybody.